Dustin, it's just great having you with us today on the CEO Global Network podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know this is the beginning of an extremely busy season for you. So, taking the time to be with us is very much appreciated. So thank you for that.
The gratitude's mutual, John. Looking forward to having a great chat today, and then hopefully, we can help inspire and share some motivation and some learnings with others
But
that we're learning along the way here.
absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you. Now, you've led Canada Snowboard through a pandemic and still hit record breaking results, Dustin. What mindset did you lean on when everything was so uncertain?
Well, that's tremendous question to kick it off with, and I lean on that period of life and reflection often, honestly, John, because I think most of us had never been through anything like it, and there was a great deal of uncertainty we were all thrust into. And really, as I had a chance to reflect and think through that, it really comes down to kind of one simple word, but then a few others that support it. And it was faith, that if we stuck with our values and had the trust in one another and just stuck with that work ethic and that resiliency and that relentlessness that this crew and this sport and the people that surrounded us had in us, as we had a shared vision about becoming that world leading snowboard nation, we knew that if we just stuck with it and stayed true to what was possible with what we could control, we were going to come out the other side. And we did. Learned so much along the way, but that was really the foundation of it, was really just that faith that if we stuck with it and the values that we all had committed ourselves to, we came out the other side. And obviously tons of learnings, and we can go on to that one for hours, there, no doubt. But to kind of sum it up, that was really the foundation of how we succeeded in that period.
Well, just to stay with values for a second, Dustin, and then we'll shift gears. But you have doubled your revenue, you doubled your team size in like the last 5 years, right? What's your secret to scaling without losing your core values?
And such a great question. And I think there is no perfect way to scale. I think you all have a shared vision of what the destination looks like, and what that North Star and that ultimately is looking and feeling like along the way. At every step of the way. And honestly, that initial scaling from a revenue perspective, it happened in 1 year. We 2x the organization from a seven-figure to an eight-figure company in 1 year's time. And we learned so much about ourselves and our readiness, and where we would have loved to have had a couple of opportunities to reconsider a couple of areas within that process. But the key of all of it was that we kept ensuring that we were measuring our values and holding ourselves accountable to those every step of the way. And to say that we were perfect every part of that, would be absolutely misleading. We absolutely had to, keep our finger on pulse and recalibrate and calibrate every step of the way to make sure that, as we were listening to our people and as we were learning and seeing, some of those measures, be it from a athlete stakeholders or staff stakeholders or ecosystem stakeholders, we wanted to make sure that we were communicating and learning from those questions on where we needed to communicate and be more thoughtful in how we ensure that everyone understands where we're going, how we're getting there, the cadence of what it's going to take to get there. And that was a big part of it. The values was the foundation every step of the way, but we had to make sure that we kept in tune with where those were coming back to us, and making sure that we're doing the right gut checks, that we were staying true to, the values and the measures of those values the way we know that we needed to.
Yeah, yeah. I imagine snowboarding is about risk and flow, Dustin. How have those principles shaped your leadership style? And have they?
Yeah, no question. I mean, coming from the sport, having grown up, being able to perform and participate in it, it's obviously meant a lot to me from just a pure enjoyment and what it means as a snowboarder and as an athlete. But those lessons that you learn along the way, especially around, the risk that you naturally take in order to either learn a new maneuver or go down, terrain that, you hadn't, conquered before. Naturally, of course, that has a substantive amount of risk. And of course, not unlike business, there's a substantive amount of risk in order to get from where you are to where you're trying to get to, at any step of the way. what you learn through the sport, and liken it to any of the board sports, but you know that in order to learn that, there's going to be some failure or some falls involved in that. But as you do, you also learn that you're going to be okay. You measure that risk, you make the right decisions around that risk. You might take a little bit of a fall or a slam, but you're going to realize, like, I'm okay. And I got up. I can go and do that again. And, again, then, it comes down to that volume of just continuing to pursue it and try it and, stick with itness. And that's where you really get into that flow state, if you will, both athletically from a sport perspective, but certainly from a business perspective as well. As you learn the right amount of risk and then around the right amount of volume and decision making, you do hit that flow state if you continue to stick with that and you learn just where that sweet spot is, and you're not having to overthink it. It's still got some risk in there and you're able to push it, but at the same time, it's absolutely manageable, and you kind of hit that right challenge zone right to where you're trying to get to. So, that's kind of the best way I describe the sport to the business alignment there.
Yeah, 100%. That's great. I'm looking at that painting of the three mountains behind you, the three mountaintop behind you. What's one lesson, and you kind of touched on this, but what's one leadership lesson you've learned on the mountain that has served you well in the boardroom, Dustin?
Yeah, great. Thank you. The biggest piece has really been around taking that step back. When you're a natural go-getter and you're ambitious and, especially like our sports, you always want to get after it. One of the key pieces that you learn along the way is actually you need to take a step back, take a breath, have a look at the line on the mountain, see what trees you want to make sure you're avoiding. You're where you want to get to, but at the same time, you've got to take that step back. And similar to, let's call it the boardroom, you know that in order to help work alongside such a great board of directors and the people in that room, you've got to take that step back and prepare and shape that vision and help make sure that everyone understands based on where their life experience and business experience has led them to in that room, and how you can make sure that you've shared that and communicated it and listened along the way to the feedback of where they're recommending you want to avoid that tree or that tree, and make sure that you've clearly shared that you've managed that risk along the way. And I really think it's really just that ability to that preparedness, and not unlike picking any line on the mountain, or whether it's in the terrain park and learning a new trick, taking that step back and putting in the work that's required in order to make sure that not only yourself, but others can see that you're capable of performing that. You've done it before, you're going to do it again, you're going to do it at the next level this time, and that you've shown all of the pieces that need to come together in order for you to successfully do that with a shared amount of risk. And I think that's kind of that, the best way that I can build that analogy, but it was really taking that step back. And then the other piece was just that stick with itness. And, we had a great strategy going into this scaling process, and we stuck with it, and you always have that uninformed optimism that you just believe what you can do. Then you learn so much in that challenge, the pain of it. And there's that point of, that sure looks nice over there, or the grass looks greener over there, but if you stick with it and you know that the strategy was true to begin with, but it got really challenging for a bit, you come out that other side and you're on that upswing and you're able to enjoy that prosperity, that, I'd say that you get from, overcoming a hard run, or whatever it is from a sport perspective, but also, certainly in the boardroom, or, in a corporate or entrepreneurial setting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One last question, Dustin, and then we'll wrap up. Canada became the top Olympic snowboard nation under your leadership. The top Olympic snowboard nation under your leadership. How do you keep raising the bar after that kind of success?
Well, we didn't get caught up in making sure that we stayed in that spot. We enjoyed and we were grateful, and we wanted to celebrate the athletes and all of the people that supported every element of our athletes and our technical leadership to be able to achieve that at those last games. And full credit and gratitude to them. we always wanted to strive towards becoming that world leading snowboard nation. And when you're on that pathway, the measures of what it is to be that world leading snowboard nation have an infinite amount of demonstrable, intangible, and tangible outcomes that you need to continue to unceasingly challenge yourself towards. And those are unquenched for us. We wanted to make sure that we're constantly leading in any of the pillars that we wanted to make sure that we were measuring in our long-term strategic goals. Yes, certainly Olympic and Paralympic podium outputs were critical in that. They are critical for sure, and they always will be. Well, at the same time, we want to make sure that we've got a deep pool of athletes in every part of this country and have access to our sport across the country and beyond. And that we were always willing to be able to lead the way in innovation and how we were hosting World Cups and building the league and the sport to new heights. And, those were the challenges that we wanted to raise the game to. And hopefully we're, setting the bar for, other sport organizations and for other snowboard nations to be able to see what's possible, through the work that this group has led and stayed true to. So it's just that, John, it was always about raising the bar and there's always, more to be done. And we hold ourselves to a very high standard and we're going to continue to work towards those standards. And that's what we hold ourselves accountable to. I'd say like one of the key pieces for us was, the formula that we stuck with. And it was really around that. Number one, we wanted to make sure that we were defining what it meant to us to be that world leading snowboard nation, or for any sport organization, what it means to be that world leading in your space. And then holding ourselves accountable to the values that we all saw as the most meaningful, making sure that we understood the purpose of what we were doing as a core organization and how we could have impact and what that meant to each of us within the areas of leadership that we had within the organization. And then, making sure that we've got the right team and people around us and those that are willing to hold themselves accountable. And then ensuring that culture at the end of the day is constantly measured and that we never lose that element of the organization. And, that's what's allowed us to continue to strive forward and kept us in a healthy place. And we are right now. And we're looking forward to these upcoming games here in February and March 2026.
Well, Dustin, congratulations on everything that you and your team have accomplished. It's just fantastic, and we wish you all the best in the future with them. You're on such a wonderful foundation there. You've built a tremendous organization, and you are a role model for so many leaders. So I want to thank you for sharing some of your leadership lessons with us today on the CO Global Network podcast, Dustin. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All the best, John. Look forward to seeing you again soon.